Hello, I'm Stephen Matchett from Campus Morning Mail, and this is Expert Opinion, where we ask people who know what's going on in education, what's going on. Expert Opinion is brought to you by Twig Marketing, Australia's original higher ed marketing consultancy. If you've got a brand issue or a message that isn't getting out there, talk to Tim Winkler. Tim at twigmarketing, that's one word, .com. And thanks to producer Amanda Johnson from Twig, who makes Expert Opinion happen. International students are coming back, just nowhere near as many, so far at least, as pre-pandemic. So what are providers to do? Wait for the golden days to shine again, or go out and pursue new markets? The latter isn't easy. Doing business with India is as complicated as the market is huge. And then there is our very large near neighbour Indonesia, which remains a mystery to most post-school providers here. But two institutions are having a go. Monash has the first international, says it has the first international foreign-owned university in Indonesia, and it's starting postgraduate programs at its own campus there. And CQU sees a great opportunity in the free trade agreement with Indonesia. At the height of last year's COVID wave, VC Nick Klomp was in Indonesia, signing an agreement to provide an MBA to the civil service in cooperation with his partner Universitas Bakri. And CQU is looking at setting up in the Sumatran city of Medan. So how's that all going? Nick Klomp, the Vice Chancellor of CQU, is with us today. Thank you for sparing the time, sir.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
So what's happening? What's happening for CQU in Indonesia at the moment?
Well, let's start from the beginning. We established our physical presence in Indonesia, bricks and mortar, floor in the heart of Jakarta, back at the beginning of 2020. That's an auspicious date and time of year because, of course, it was at the very start of COVID. So a lousy time, but nonetheless, we maintained that presence this whole time. And as you mentioned, I've been back and forth there as well. We started out immediately offering professional development courses for government. And as you might imagine, during the height of COVID, that waned a fair bit because people couldn't even attend some of those classes, Stephen. But we're also offering now, and have been for the last couple of years, joint degrees with Bakri University, Universitas Bakri, also in the heart of Jakarta. Indeed, we've already, and these are joint master's degrees. So they come up with, the students come up with a master's of business master of business and a master's of management with Bakri University and the separate master's degree with CQ University. We've been doing that for a couple of years now.
That's rather like what the Indian model is supposed to be, under the federal Indian government's new regulations. That dual degree approach.
So we've done this with Bakri University. It's a well-regarded university, and a lot of people were studying their postgraduate and undergraduate coming through with them. So it's a similar model. We recognise what University of Bakri is doing, and we give I think it's 4 subjects credit to, and then they do our standalone masters, and they come up with the Bakri degree and with our degree separately. And we've been doing this, Stephen, for a couple of years because I attended our first graduation back in January this year. And guess what? It's next week that we have our next graduation. And some of those students, even though they don't need to, some of those graduates are coming over to Brisbane to our CQ University graduation in Brisbane. So they're making a big fuss of them, and we are as well. So that's next week. So we've had a number of cohorts through already.
And what about Medan?
Yes. Now, of course, Medan was completely put on hold because of COVID. You couldn't get any buildings or anything else. And so we're still actively looking at that as a possibility because Medan and the region, there's tens of thousands of people that go from there overseas, particularly across the strait to Malaysia for international education, higher education. So that's an obvious place for us to be thinking about working. But I've got to say, we've got irons in the fire in Jakarta as well, besides our current operations, the joint degrees at Bakri. We've got undergraduate degrees now starting as well in digital media and public relations, I think, and business, undergrad as well as postgrad. So we've got lots going on there, and we've got opportunities to further that and perhaps even stand alone, continue delivering in Jakarta. But Medan is a possibility as well. So we've got a number of irons in the fire. We haven't committed to any one of them, but boy, have we got the relationships with the Indonesian government. And so we need to be thinking about what's best for us.
How long has that taken? What sort of investment in time and indeed money has it taken to build those connections?
Years. And I've been the Vice Chancellor at Seeker University for 3.5 years, and there was plenty of connections before I came, but certainly ramped up a heap when I came. It was just pre-COVID. I had 3 ministers, a couple of very senior Indonesian ministers here on my house on Rockhampton campus, flipping burgers with us at my place. So we have got lots of formal connections and lots of informal connections. So I'm going over there in the next few weeks again. There'll be lunches and morning teas and catch-ups and discussions of what is good for Indonesia, what is good for Seeker University in Australia more generally, and how can we collaborate on the tertiary front. Remember that we're a dual sector university. So it's a possibility that we work in the vet space as well. But at the moment, our concentration has been on higher ed.
I'll come back to the vet question in a minute, because that really does interest me. But looking at you as a higher education provider, culturally, they have, as I understand it, they have quite a traditional model where universities are pretty much extensions of the state. And people see themselves as being on the public payroll, as it were. How do they adjust to the much more decentralised self-contained Australian model?
I think that there's lessons to be learnt all over the shop here, Stephen. I have seen lots of adjustment on both sides. So the beauty of doing, joining in Bakri University in undergraduate degrees is the requirement in Indonesia for, I think it's 4 subjects of religious education. They are doing. They're experts at it, they know what they're doing, and that we then can concentrate on our curriculum, which of course is fully accredited curriculum in pretty well any discipline you choose. So there's been those sorts of adjustments. We've had lots of conversations, lots of honest conversations, and the adjustments are therefore pretty straightforward. So I find that really good. I keep mentioning Bakri University, but of course, we've also got a relationship with Sam Ratalungi University up at Manado, top right when you're looking at the world map. And that's, we refer to that as a triple helix project, but just very briefly, that's mostly research, but also PhD training and others. And that is, we've got funding from the Indonesian government for agricultural research and teaching, and we're doing that with Sam Ratalungi University. So these are where other universities, Monash and others, have got the deep pockets to provide the scholarships and do something good on them. That builds relationships, and the better Australian universities do generally, the better individuals can do. So that's terrific. We don't have those deep pockets, so we've had to make sure that we do things on the smell of an oily rag, and a lot of that is Indonesian government are keen on what we do, and so they're funding quite a bit of it.
I mean, you've got strengths in tropical agriculture, or subtropical. I remember some said there was talk of a sustainable agriculture venture in South Sulawesi. Is that right?
Yes, more up in Manado area.
Okay.
And with that, yes, agriculture is a big one, but so is renewable energy is a big one, and so is health. In fact, they're the 3 research areas that IASEPA, the free trade agreement, has concentrated on the research side of things. And then on the teaching side of things, what have they referred to specifically? Well, leadership, entrepreneurship, social innovation, the very things that we do in our masters anyway. So we feel as though we haven't ignored the Indonesian government turned up in some sort of neo-colonial sort of approach going, we know what we're doing, let us, because it hasn't been like that at all. It's been a genuine partnership. And I think that is the way to do it. I mean, it's respectful for starters, but it's also, that is what Indonesia wants, and that's what we can provide.
Well, yeah, I was talking to Liam Prince the other day from the Indonesian country, and he was making the point that we do not speak their language, and
yes,
and I imagine they know it. There must be a degree of effort just to demonstrate that we are not just arriving and telling them how to run things.
Yes, absolutely. We make sure that we have the right advisors, and I can't speak Bahasa Indonesia. I can say hello, and I can say library, perpustaka. I can say a few words here and there. So I'm hopeless, but you are right. And Liam was right as well. Language is important. Respect of culture is really important. So I don't turn up, boots and all sort of things, thinking that I know the answers. I turn up and say, let's talk. And here's a really good example. Indonesia, the obvious reason why we're there is that it's a huge potential market, 275 million people. But they've got about 10% of their population having a higher degree, Stephen. But they want about, I think it was 57 million more graduates by 2030.
When you say higher degree, you mean an undergraduate degree?
I beg your pardon, yeah, a university degree.
A qualification post-school.
Yes,
yeah,
and they want their aim, looking at the workforce requirements and the sorts of work coming up, that I think I'm right in saying the number was 57 million more graduates by 2030. Now, how is that going to be? It's a distributed country. A lot of them, not everyone's going to be able to go to Jakarta. It can't be face-to-face. Well, Siki University is one of the pioneers in online distance education. We've been doing it for just on 50 years now. And our online presence and our online student experience is really pretty cool. So now, Indonesia, India, many countries aren't used to online. Immediately it looks like perhaps lower class, or maybe people are cheating, or maybe, you're a private organisation. But of course in Australia, because of TEXA and all our accreditation requirements, we do it seriously. We do it well, and we know that it's you doing it, Stephen, and not your smart sister doing it. So there's a whole lot that we can offer, and there's a whole lot that we can learn from Indonesia. I think the partnership works well.
Looking at VET, I mean, I imagine a vast amount of demand that will be there, but have any yours or any other Australian institution, can they get the cost structure right?
It's a tough one, and whilst we look at it and have lots of conversations about it, I can't say that we've cracked it by any means. And I think that that's one of the big points, is the cost structure. The thing with getting a post-secondary degree is that you're very likely to get jobs that you wouldn't have got otherwise. But in Indonesia and in many other countries, we could do an apprenticeship or a VET qualification, but they don't necessarily need that qualification to do the job. They can still do hairdressing or construction work or plumbing or electrical or something, and they don't necessarily need the qualification in that country. So that's the thing. It's got to be value for money. There's got to be a repayment on the investment of time and money for them. And so the VET stuff is hard. It's often government funded stuff where other organisations can make a few dollars and provide some services in the VET space, because individuals will pretty rarely decide to invest in that in country. They might come to Australia for other reasons, for the experience, the contacts, the possibility of visas and other things. But in country, it's a tough one to crack. What's the answer to that, Stephen? I think the answer is be there. Have the discussions, keep on chatting to the government. They didn't turn up when I started this role and say, here's $5 million to work on research in livestock and agriculture. They wanted to see our bona fides. They wanted to see that we're serious, that we're doing partnerships that is actually good for Indonesia, in this case, Sam Radalunga University. And then they were convinced that we were there and not fly-by-nighters. So I think it might not happen overnight. It will happen because it needs to happen in Indonesia and they recognise it. But you've got to be authentic about this.
It seems like a very long time frame, and indeed a large investment. Do you anticipate getting to the point where you've got a workforce of yours there that are native Indonesians?
We've already got a dozen people or more working in our campus in Jakarta. And we're already teaching students on the campus, of course. So that's been going on for a couple of years. It's slower because of COVID. It would be a whole lot bigger. We had, as you mentioned in your introduction, we've got government-funded scholarship, Indonesian government-funded scholarships for their managers, middle managers and supervisors to do our courses. We've got Indonesian government-funded for research. And that's happened in the middle of COVID. So if we could have had the CPD and other professional development and other works that we had in planned, we would be a lot further ahead. But that's okay. We're almost over COVID. We're regrouping again. Nothing's really changed. It's just that, things were slowed down a little bit. I'm actually pleasantly surprised. We've had, I don't know, a dozen or so graduates at each cohort coming through. We've got more next week. I think there's 15 Indonesian folk coming across for the graduations in Brisbane next week. So we're getting there, absolutely. And this is all influencing our reputation and the contacts with the Indonesian government.
How long is your time frame until you reach whatever objective you've got?
I think the first question is, what is the objective? And I think we certainly did our sums such that it would take us a few years to break even from our investment, which for us is the low millions. I know that other universities can throw money at this. That will take us a few years to do it, but we thought even if we never got there, this is the right thing to do. This is something that a university stands for. And we're pretty experienced in that regional thin market sort of space. If it wasn't for COVID, we might be getting there now. But I think that we've shown our bona fides, and me turning up and others turning up in spite of COVID. I think that's helped a lot. That really impressed people. A couple of the ministers said, "You're the only vice chancellor here." It was an interesting comment. I think that we could fast track things from now. Give me another couple of years and let's chat again about this. But I think onwards and upwards from here.
Who's the competition? Is there competition? Not necessarily from Australia, but just globally. Who's the competition? I thought the Germans were interested at one stage.
Who, sorry?
I thought the Germans were interested in one stage.
Yeah, look, I think everyone is looking at Indonesia and realising that there's a huge population, government desire for higher education, and a burgeoning middle class. So I think it's an opportunity for lots of people. Some people pull me up every now and again, Stephen, and say, "Hey, what's Monash doing?" Monash isn't the competition. It's I cheer for Monash, everything they can do, and any other university that can go in that space. Australia is so small compared to Indonesia and compared to the world. So I think there's effectively little competition at the moment because there's so much potential demand. It might change over the next few years, but at the moment, the more wins that Australia can do in any institution, the better it is for the whole of Australia, including us. But definitely Britain, definitely Canada, definitely Germany. They're the ones that I know about that have got that are either got a presence or are sniffing around. And I think the world is slowly waking up to Indonesia.
How serious is the skills issue for them? I mean, is economic growth being slowed by a skills shortage?
I think they're pretty serious to identify the areas of research and teaching that they want. I don't think you go into a free trade agreement because, you want to protect your industries and your population, but going there to recognise that actually there's some benefits to both countries and opening up can be a benefit. I think they're serious. I think Australia's going through it, and probably every country in the world at the moment, Stephen, hang on, where is our workforce? And not just our unskilled workforce, where's the skilled workforce? Because that's where the jobs of the future are. And I think economies are driven on that. So ignore it at your peril. It only took us a couple of years of ignoring it, forced on us by COVID. And we're suddenly in a situation where we're running around trying to fix things. So you can't ignore it for long in a country.
Does the Indonesian higher education community, are they suspicious, or do they welcome you? Or?
I think it's mixed. I think there's a natural tendency to be a little bit protective. And what's this? What are these strangers turning up? I think that might be a natural reaction. Frankly, I've never actually had that. I just expect that would be the case. And I think that you have to spend some time talking to them about what we've got to offer. What are some of the things that they would like assistance or support in, or what we can work together on and attract international monies or other ththings that we're better together than apart, and genuinely have those discussions. A good example is this morning, I met up with a group that have been here, MORA, the Ministry of Religious Affairs from Indonesia, and they've had people working with us so they can be supervisors of our PhD students. And we call it an Accelerate program. We're very, very careful about it. We don't let anyone supervise. Not only do they have to have the qualifications, scholarship, but they have to have the training within Sika University. Well, that has just been terrific. They've met everybody else at Sika University. They've thought about all the different ways that Australia does things that is differently from Indonesia. And of course, now they're emerging as qualified supervisors for more PhD students. Laura has given us a dozen PhD scholarships, and there's plenty more into the future. But how did that happen? It happened by working with them and saying, what's possible? What do you need? And can we, instead of turning up and saying, we can do it, just say, hey, let's send your staff over and let's work with you as well. Let's work together on this.
And that's the Ministry of Religious Affairs?
Yeah, more MORA, Ministry of Religious Affairs. They give out, I think, a total of 5,000 scholarships. There's a lot of scholarships, Stephen. And
that is, and their role is what, in a general sense, or in a theologically specific one?
No, it used to be, it started off being quite theologically specific about what the areas of research, but it's much more general now. It just so happens that the scholarships go through there.
Okay. I had no idea.
I know there's so much, and it changes a lot. It's an amazingly dynamic country.
How fast is it changing in the time you've been going there?
Too fast for me. And that's why we have advisors as well. I regularly need to be caught up to speed. I'm saying, hang on, that's a legislation. Yes, but there's also processes and procedures and other things that you need to know about as well. It's a bit like me saying, hang on, the federal government funds me, and they say, yeah, but you're dual sector, Nick. The Queensland government's got an attitude. Texas has got an attitude, accrediting group's got an attitude. If you came in from Mars and looked at how many people I need to answer to, you'd think, how does that even operate? And so when you go to a new country, you've got to learn all those tricks as well.
Well, comparisons aren't fair, but I'll do it anyway. Would you rather be doing business in Indonesia or India?
Well, we do great business in India, of course. That's where most of our international students come from. Pre-COVID, we had about 8,000 students at our campuses around Australia, where this year we'll be back to about 2,000. They're coming through strong. I love India as well. I love working with them, and we've got great relationships. And we've been working through India and genuinely in India for 20 years. So I think I feel as though we know India more, but gee, Indonesia's coming up fast. Don't make me pick, Stephen. They're both amazing countries, and I love visiting them.
Excluding money, what can the Commonwealth do for you to help with this? I think they've done well with IASEPA. There's still some bureaucracy. So you might want to explain that for our audience.
IASEPA is the free trade agreement that Indonesia and Australia signed, I think last year, middle of last year, probably a year ago now. And whilst that's a free trade agreement in principle, I mean, it's signed, the details, the approvals and other things have slowly got to go through. And I think DFAT and others are working through that well. I want it all and want it now, and I'm very impatient, Stephen, but I understand that these things come. So they could continue working on that. That would be terrific. I think perhaps Sika University, and I'm the chair of the Regional Universities Network, so I can speak with authority. Many regional universities suffer from being out of sight, out of mind. So I'm with the new minister and with a new assistant minister in Anthony Chisholm, I'm making sure, reminding the federal government that not all universities are in the cities. And it's an easy thing to say, Indonesia, Monash, it's an easy thing to do that together. And they've just got to be thinking more and more about regional universities, because otherwise decisions are made that ignore the special conditions that regional universities work under. And here's a classic example where, we're working in the international space. I'm not quite sure how many people even know it.
I think you had Senator Chisholm and the Treasurer on campus last week.
Yes, and I have to say there's been a definite improvement over the last few weeks, and that's been great. Yes, and I really did appreciate that. It was their first roundtable on jobs and skills. They decided to do it in Rockhampton in central Queensland, and so the Treasurer was here and Senator Anthony Chisholm. It was terrific as well. It was because there's regional context that they wouldn't have thought about from Canberra, that's for sure.
A cynical Indonesian journalist, I'm sure there are very few, but a cynical Indonesian journalist could say at this stage, this is all well and good, but none of you speak our language and none of you seem any interested in doing anything other than going to Bali. I mean, do we need as a nation to embrace who is our nearest new neighbour and who
Yes.
we may well need in the future for all sorts of reasons.
Yes. Yeah. I think we need to, why wouldn't we engage with our neighbours in the best way possible? No doubt about that. I haven't been back to Bali for a long time, despite me going back to Jakarta quite a bit, but I love Bali, and I think we should be proud of that as well. They've got a slice of paradise there. No, I think if I came across a cynical Indonesian reporter, I would say, hang on, we're working together and we're only doing stuff that Indonesia wants. We're certainly not forcing it, and have a look at the outcomes. We've got these graduates that are now working in and more opportunity, and their family and their colleagues and others are also thinking, wow, if they can do it, we can do it. And we come from that pedigree in regional areas where there's so much less representation in higher ed and tertiary education. So we know what that's like to be first in family and to build that aspiration, but we also know how it changes lives. So if we can bring some of that expertise and join forces with the Indonesian government, why wouldn't we?
Excellent rhetorical question to end on. Thank you for your time, sir. Nick Klomp, Vice Chancellor of Central Queensland CQU University. Much obliged. We'll get you back on. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
sir.
Stephen. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.